Hello everyone, Evening here, and today I'm going to be making a video based off a comment that one of my subscribers did on my video where I introduced some of the main characters, to Evening's backstory. And basically this comment said you should make a video explaining more about Evening, well, a lot about Evening and the characters that are in her story. So today, that's what I'm gonna do, because I'm bored and I'm kind of interested in seeing how I can explain this. First off, I'm going to start off with who is Evening. Evening is the morph I am currently playing as. I changed her a little bit from last time, so that's why she looks different, but she's my main morph. She is my mascot for my channel, Clouded'dawnWcue, and she is about 4 years old of now. And she is the leader of a little refugee group. Basically, Evening is a rogue. She got kicked out of Shadow Clan, which we'll get into more later. But basically, she just runs this little group of little exiled cats, and they all respect her for it. Now, on to my next thing. Why did Evening get exiled? Evening was originally part of Shadow Clan, as I mentioned moments earlier. She was exiled as an apprentice. She was a very well-respected cat, even as a apprentice. Being an apprentice in Shadow Clan, she really enjoyed it. Her mentor, who I haven't decided the name of yet because that'll come later on in her story, and I'm going to let the person that plays her mentor choose one of their own morphs. But long story short, Evening is literally just a cat that got exiled for a reason that her sister framed her for. Evening has a sister named Aspenfall, at the time Aspenpaw. They were born to Smoky Bramble and Featherbreeze. These two were very proud of Evening Paw, and also very proud of Aspenpaw. But Aspenpaw thought that Evening was the favorite, and as Evening was kind of favored by the clan because she actually did her duties, didn't complain about them, and was very diligent with them, got along with everyone, and didn't cause problems. Aspenpaw, on the other hand, never did her duties, even sometimes making Evening do them herself. And she never really got along with anyone. She had a specific group of friends which were all bullies of other apprentices in the clans, and she still considered Evening the favorite of her parents. Even though this was not true, they loved both cats equally, but, Aspen didn't see it that way. Apparently, Evening did respect her sister's outtake on it, I guess. She thought her sister was being a little bit unreasonable, but didn't blame her either. It was more of a, you kind of understand when your friend is spacing away from you. That's kind of what Evening thought it was. She thought her sister was temporarily mad at her, but Aspenpaw was not happy with Evening being the favored one. Evening and Aspenpaw eventually got little siblings, who were 3 little kittens named Owlkit, Tundrakit, and Lakekit. Lakekit actually didn't survive their death, but we'll get into more of that in a minute. So Evening and Aspenpaw were put on watch patrol of their little siblings so their parents could go out and do normal duties. The whole clan was adored by the new kits, and Evening was absolutely thrilled to finally have little siblings. She didn't like being the first litter. She didn't think of it as a bad thing, but she wanted little siblings she could be a model for. And she really was, especially for Tundrakit and Lakekit. Sorry, anyway. So basically, they were put on watch duty, and Aspenpaw gave in to the kids' want to see the outside of camp. Evening was skeptical, but after asking the medicine cat, who is completely unnamed, because, again, I'm going to let the person that plays the medicine cat choose the cat's name because it's going to be one of their own morphs, but anyway. The medicine cat approved it as long as they stayed right outside of the camp and only showed them the little bit of camp, all the way to the rock that's outside of the Shadow Clan camp. Evening Paw was kind of skeptical but the kits, not knowing this rule, ran off and ended up actually going to the Thunderpath. Evening tried to stop them, and actually ran onto the Thunderpath to try and get her siblings to not be in that territory. She was really concerned for her siblings and didn't want them in that territory, as it was very dangerous. And she wasn't wrong. Right as the kits had gotten onto the Thunderpath and were finally aware that they had entered danger territory, a monster was coming full speed at them. Evening Paw, being the older sibling and being very protective over her little siblings, ran onto the Thunderpath to try and stop them. Or at least to try and get them off the Thunderpath, so they didn't get, killed. She ended up getting a broken leg from this. Her front leg was extremely injured, almost kind of like Cinderpaw and her injury, but it wasn't as severe. It was able to be healed over time, which she was very thankful for, as she knew that some cats would never get their ableness back. So Evening Paw, being the older one again, ran under the Thunderpath to stop her little siblings from getting hit. The monster struck her square in her front paw, as I had already mentioned seconds ago, and Lake Kit, Tundra Kit, and Owl Kit were actually pushed to the side and not able to come back on. Aspen Paw was horrified. She didn't expect Evening to go on, and thinking that Evening would just run off to go get help or something, but no, she ran on, which is something that actually pleased Aspen Paw. She thought that she had died, but when this child actually got up and trotted over to the little kittens and told them how dangerous it was for them to be going over there. How dangerous it was for them to be going on the Thunderpath. The kids didn't understand at first until they saw the severity of their older sister's injury. They promised they'd never go near it again, and Evening made it safely back home, but her parents were horrified. When they asked, before Evening got a chance, Aspen Paw said that the medicine cat had approved them to go as far as the rock, but Evening Paw said it would be good if they saw the dangers of the territory. So they brought them to the Thunderpath. Of course, Aspen Paw tried to take the thing that she wasn't the one that took it, and Evening Paw decided to try and to defend herself because she did not want to be told off as a killer. Fun fact, Lake Kit actually got hit with Evening. He was right under the paw that Evening got severely injured. And I'm guessing you guys can guess what happens. The poor kitten did not survive. Lake Kit died on impact, and Evening had to carry him back to camp. That was very traumatic. Everyone thought that he'd survive, but he did not. The poor little kitten ended up dying, as I said. She felt extremely guilty, thinking that maybe her brother's death was her fault for not going there faster or stopping them from going to the Thunderpath and putting her foot down and telling the kits to stay back. Or maybe even catching up with them before Aspen Paw and Evening Paw originally did. Aspen Paw's story of Evening purposely leading them to the Thunderpath was backed up by the fact that Evening Paw had blood on her paws. No one even bothered to look at her paw before the leader at the time, which not determined, decided to exile her without remorse. He told her that she was never to return, as the death of her sibling, Lake Kit, was on her hands. Now, what happened to Tundra Kit and Owl Kit, you ask? Well, they grew up in ShadowClan. When they asked if Lake Kit and Evening Paw were coming back, they explained that Evening Paw tried to kill them. And Owl Paw and Tundra Paw, being only kittens at the time when they asked this, believed their older sister Aspen Paw with no problem, which is something that Evening had to watch horridly. She was ran from the territory, as any exiled cat was, and not given a chance to actually explain herself. When she tried to go to the other clans, maybe to find a home and still be able to watch her siblings grow up, she, of course, didn't have the guts to go before the gathering. She wanted to explain herself. She didn't realize how close the gathering was, and when she tried to go to the other territory, she was brushed off as well. One patrol in particular, though, caught her eye. Evening was traveling through One Clan territory trying to find the camp. She actually got pretty close before our patrol spotted her and was driving her off. But one kitten, apprentice, whose name was Skypaw, tried to convince his mentor to give her a fair hearing. But believing the other clan leader, his mentor, scolded him for saying he had empathy for a murderer, and she never saw the Tom again. She got kicked out of One Clan territory and went to the barn. At the barn, she met a nice two-leg. She was told never to trust two-legs, so she didn't at first, until the other cat that was staying there, whose name was Winter, was actually really nice and took her under his wing, teaching her how to do everything she needed to know. She also got close with the West. Sorry, that was my mother. But anyway, for the rest of the time, she stayed there for a while, getting close with the two-leg and learning how to take care of everything. She was the ideal barn cat, getting rid of pests, helping with the animals, anything that was deemed necessary for a barn cat, I guess. She became her owner's close cat.
Hello?
Yes, I know. Anyway, she became close with the two-leg as well. The two-leg eventually gave her the little sage-colored bandana on her neck. And a lot of you have asked where the little brownish, reddish leaves. They are maple leaves. And the reason they're in their tail is because when she was a kitten, she loved to play and collect maple leaves when she was still in the nursery. So her parents ended up giving her a little twig to wrap all of the little maple leaves that she found in her tail. She's kept it because she believes that maybe one day the truth will come out, and maybe she'll get the justice that her sister actually sort of killed their siblings. But anyway, basically, and then another question I got was, where do the little flowers come from? The little purplish flowers, like the head flowers and the tail flowers. Those come from her close friends, Honey and Adder. A little after her two-leg moved away and Winter passed away, and all the animals on the farm were taken with, the barn became deserted. The two-legs decided to keep the barn up because he was a well-known farmer, and that they knew that the cat Evening lived there, and she refused to come out, and she was uncatchable from the two-legs. So they eventually stopped being so defiant and trying to catch her, and left her there. It's now known as the cat barn to the two-legs since, but for Evening, it's known as her home. It's known as a refugee for all of the cats that need homes, which is something that all of the rogues existing in the warrior cat world are very thankful for. Evening eventually, a little bit after, met Adder, a rogue from River Glen, whose name was not Adderfang. Oh my god, I was about to say Adderfang. Adderswipe. Adderswipe was a dusky brown Tom who was very polite and very nice. At first he was closed off and reserved around Evening, not wanting to tell her anything. But he also had heard about Evening's story, and seeing her nice personality and figured that a murderer wouldn't be nice, he asked her what happened. When she told him, he opened up to her by explaining how he had gotten exiled from River Clan for supposedly causing his apprentice's death. More on this when we get to Adder's part of the story. About 2 moons later, they met Honey, another cat from RiverClan that had gotten exiled, whose name was Honeyfern. Not the Honeyfern from the books. I did not give her the suffix. One of my friends just did. But Honeyfern was exiled for reasons that we will get to later on. Oh my god, I'm so sorry about the messages coming in. Anyway. Honey, Adder, and Evening got extremely close. Originally, Honey, Adder, and Evening were content with each other, but when more rogues started to hear that there were rogues at the barn, they would ask Evening to stay, and Evening would let them. She eventually got known as the local rogue group leader. Eventually, this group expanded to mini cats. She was eventually taking in every rogue that came her way, giving them time, and everybody knows everybody's story. Even if a rogue killed and they're malicious, Evening welcomes them as she believes every cat deserves a second chance. A lot of the rogues that killed for reasons that they don't want to explain, which is something that Evening allows, actually become a little bit more open with the group, even going to such minded areas that they actually end up eventually opening up to the rest of the group. They actually just start to be a lot more comfortable. Evening is very glad, as her sole purpose in her life figuration was to give a home. And she did exactly that with all of these cats and all of these worlds. Eventually, everything was running smoothly until when she was about maybe 3 years old, and she got in trouble with the Wind Clan leader, Sunnystar. Sorry, not Sunnystar, Sunstar. Sunstar was not very kind to Evening. She believed what ShadowClan had told her, as ShadowClan and Wind Clan were allies. So after hearing about the apprentice that was exiled, she of course believed it without a second thought. And she really did, too. Evening was heartbroken that maybe Wind Clan might have taken her in and she could leave, but as she learned before, she didn't. And before you jump to conclusions, no, Evening did not want to leave all the rogues. She could live part-time. At least, that's what one of the cats teased her about. But anyway, that's not part of the story. Well, technically it is, but anyway. When she started to go hunting on Wind Clan territory out of desperation for food for the cats that lived with her, Sunstar was not very happy, thinking that Evening was trying to take over her clan. Now, you may pass this up as a leader being protective over the clan they swore to protect, but this isn't true. Sunnystar never really liked Evening, even when she was an apprentice. Sunstar was reminded of her sister when thinking about Evening being the perfect little cat in her clan's world. When she heard about the news, so when they got the rules or the news, she did not like Evening from that moment forward. Anyway, Evening eventually, these problems escalated. She was not known as a friend towards Wind Clan. But remember when I mentioned Skypaw? Yeah, he never lost the feeling that maybe Evening was innocent. More innocent than maybe they thought. After Skypaw became a warrior whose name was Sky Whisper, he started to go out on more patrols. And on one Pacific patrol, at this point Evening was 4, on one Pacific patrol, Sky Whisper and his sibling, Cardinal Blaze, who is the deputy of Wind Clan, he's a Tom, by the way, and him were on a patrol. Cardinal Blaze jumped to conclusions and just let all of his anger out on Evening as she met him at the fence. Sky Whisper tried to convince his brother to stop yelling, which is something Evening did not expect. Normally, Wind Clan cats were hostile towards her because of what Sunnystar had told them, but Sky Whisper wasn't, apparently. Sky Whisper wanted to be her friend, and actually came back the next day. while she was hunting prey in the little bit of territory that Sunnystar allowed them to have in Old WindClan territory. And when she found him on his territory, she was a little bit skeptical and a little bit defensive, obviously, and started to be a little bit more cautious around him. Over time, after their little conversation, she started to have a little bit more comfortability around him, knowing that he wasn't like the rest of his clan. She eventually became close with Sky Whisper. Sky Whisper would sneak around and became close with all of the rogues, known as an honorary rogue member of this little group. Eventually, Sunnystar figured out that he was hanging out with the rogues, and she was not happy, as you can suspect. She didn't like evening in the first place, and now one of her cats was hanging out
Dinner's
with...
not officially fucking ready.
Anyway, as you can suspect, she was not happy, even punishing Sky Whisper by making him be on camp duty rest. He was not allowed to leave camp. Evening thought that maybe he had changed his mind and wasn't going to be their friend anymore, but that wasn't true, and Sky Whisper came back a few days later, explaining the situation. Now, one Pacific day, which I'm not going to name by name because that's kind of creepy. Anyway, and I did not even consider what day this would be. I mean, if we're talking human years, it may have been like a Wednesday. Well, not human years, human days or whatever. Anyway. So, basically, Sky Whisper was told to... Evening asked Sky Whisper to stay with them temporarily, maybe just a night or two, saying that he was on his own little mission, which is what he could say to his clan. Sky Whisper actually agreed and told his clan he was going to investigate a scent that he smelled near High Stones when he accidentally crossed the Thunderpath with the hunt. Sunnystar allowed him to go, and he stayed with Evening and her friend at the barn for a few days. Over their time hanging out and spending time with each other, they did develop feelings for each other. Eventually, they didn't tell each other at all because, I don't know, maybe they just didn't feel like they were comfortable enough to do that yet. Nothing wrong with that, right? Anyway, without me trying not to laugh. Anyway, so after this, Sunnystar did end up actually finding out that he was spending time with Evening because he spent a day there, and to avoid being caught with the scent of the rogues, he spent a day just wandering around territory near High Stones and stuff like that, so he could get the scent on him. When he came back the next day to visit Evening, they had a new person, and that new person didn't trust that he was part of the group, or that he had been a friend of the group, just because he smelled like a WindClan cat, and anything like that, until Evening told him that it was a friend, not a foe, a friend. He finally decided that it was okay, and Sky Whisper continued this little routine. He'd say there were strange scents, and Sunnystar really just thought he was being a very good warrior and making sure even the outside of around their of WindClan territory was safe, so there was no upcoming threats to be found in WindClan territory. Such a loyal warrior, right? If only Sunstar knew one of her most trusted warriors was out hanging out with the rogues that she absolutely despised. But one day, Sunnystar did get a little suspicious when he did this 4 days in a row. Normally, he didn't do it not 4 days. Oh my god. He usually only did it for a day or two. Now he was doing it for 4 days in a row. She became extremely skeptical, thinking maybe he was doing something that he wasn't exactly telling anybody. And she was not wrong. He was sneaking off to do some stuff that the leader would not approve of. At all. Really at all, because, I mean, who approves of one of their most trusted and best warriors going out into the middle of their enemy and hanging out with them, acting like close friends, and even gaining a romantic relationship with the sworn enemy. So, I mean, hey, I don't think I'd be too happy either, but I think Sunstar was a little bit over dramatic. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into the final battle. If I say any much that happened between then and now, I'm going to spoil a lot for my series, so I'm going to keep it at that for now. Long story short, eventually, when Sunnystar found out, she started conspiring. She was furious, and when Sky Whisper explained that he was extremely dedicated, that he was just experimenting with his ways, Evening felt extremely hurt and didn't talk to him for moons on end, because she felt very hurt, and maybe that he was just playing with her feelings, and everybody else really was skeptical too. Until he managed to convince everyone that he truly was saying that just so Sunstar wouldn't end up exiling him. For their plan to make Sunnystar stop, they needed somebody on the inside, and Evening knew that, and that was originally him, until maybe he wasn't who they thought he was. In a way, he managed to convince them, and eventually a war broke out, because Sunnystar was wondering why he was leaving so soon after their fight. No surprise to Sunnystar, he was off to see his rogue friends, and heard everything that he had said. Learning that he was conspiring against them, he got exiled after the battle. The battle went as smooth as any battle can go. There were many casualties, from deaths to severe injuries, to injuries that were incapable of being fixed, to injuries that nobody even wanted to look at because they were so ugly. To the point where it was said that the Rogue Group and Wind Clan would never even reconcile. Sunstar, of course, thought that this was true. Why would she say sorry for a battle that they caused? They took one of her most prized warriors. They had to pay for it. Evening ended up losing a lot of blood, meaning she almost died, which is something a lot of the rogues took very personally. A lot of them, especially Beepaw, the kitten that she took in not too far from when she first started taking in refugees, whose name was Beepaw. He'd considered her a mother, and her almost losing blood loss made him extremely, extremely hostile towards the Wind Clan cats. Sky Whisper's brother, whose name was, again, Cardinal Blaze, was extremely hurt, thinking that his brother was a complete traitor, until he had learned what Sunstar had caused the poor Evening. He felt terrible, thinking that maybe he was on the wrong side of the fight the whole entire time. He had a change of heart, and since Sunstar actually, shortly after the battle, when Beepaw, Adder, and Honey got so fed up that they decided that they were going to take their own revenge. They went to not ThunderClan, oh my god. They went to ShadowClan, the one clan that you'd never expect to help, right? Well, Featherbreeze and Smoky Bramble and Tundrapaw and Owlpaw did not believe and knew that Evening was not responsible for this. Espenfall had gained the deputy rank because she had avenged her siblings or whatever, but, I think that was a little psychopathic. But anyway, they decided to help. Learning what happened to their daughter, Smoky Bramble went on a rage. At the gathering, he straight up confronted Sunstar, and Sunstar defended herself fiercely, saying that Evening was known as a killer already, and the fact that she had tried to kill Sunstar was simply defending herself. But nobody believed her. They thought that she was being unreasonable, and making somebody almost die from blood loss was a little too far. Smoky Bramble and Featherbreeze took this as a personal offense, thinking that maybe Sunstar was saying that this ran in the family. And of course it didn't run in the family. Evening even overheard this and took this as a personal offense as well. Over time, this got extremely harsh on Evening. She didn't want to be a cat that people were scared of. She wanted to be a cat people could rely on to be there if they needed it. And she truly was that cat to all of the rogues, but she wanted to be known for that even in the clans. And when the clans learned what Sunstar did, they all told her she was being completely unreasonable. And when Sunstar outlashed and said that they were all being clueless and brainless freaks. Cats that were being brainwashed by a cat that had killed her own siblings. They had said that they did not trust her anymore, and that they couldn't trust her, and that she was being unreasonable by banishing Evening from her own home. And she truly was being unreasonable. It was pointless, because Evening was innocent in the end. To the point where Ravenstar, who was deputy at the time of Evening's exile, was so guilty that he even offered Evening a place back in ShadowClan. But Evening explained that she'd always be loyal and an ally to ShadowClan, but it wasn't her home anymore. Her home was the barn, with the rogue that she had taken in. Ravenstar respected this. He decided that they would be permanent allies whenever it was needed in battle or even in anything else. They'd be permanent allies, and though this went against the warrior code, Ravenstar didn't care. He saw Evening for who she truly was, and Aspenfall, even though Aspenfall hasn't or didn't get exposed at the time, Afumi and stayed in ShadowClan. It was heartbreaking for Evening. She felt very betrayed that Ravenstar didn't even think to hear about her side of the story. So she stayed away from ShadowClan for a while, only visiting to see her parents, and talk to Ravenstar briefly. But Ravenstar could tell that there was something wrong with Evening. When he asked, Evening was closed off, not telling him a single thing about why she was upset at him. When Ravenstar started to question everything, he finally realized soon after. He finally decided to give Evening a fair hearing, and that's where I'm gonna end it, because I don't want to spoil anything for the series. Sorry if any of you, wanted to know everything, but, that would spoil so much out of the series. Though I will explain a little bit more of the reminders of every one of her accessories. The head flowers and the tail flower she got from Evening and Adder as their little welcome to the friend group thing, I guess. The maple leaf she got from her family because she was always playing around with maple leaves as a kitten. The bandana she got from her two-leg before he had to move away, and he couldn't find Evening at all because she had gone on one of her little adventures again, and he couldn't wait for her. So sad, so sad. And the lavender she actually got from Sky Whisper as a little gift out of the blue. But this is myself saying goodbyes, as I cannot spoil anymore. So this is Evening out. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will post again soon. See you guys next time. Goodbye!